Welcome to the Adulting Demystified podcast with your host, Odelia Goldberg. In each episode, we'll have subject matter experts discuss things that most people don't know, but probably should. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, ogoldberglaw.com. Now, here's the host of Adulting Demystified, Odelia Goldberg.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we have Andrew Bellinson, one of my really good friends and an elder law attorney. Thank you so much, Andrew, for, jumping in here and helping us out.
Of course, anything for you, Odelia.
So Andrew and I work closely together because you do exactly what I don't do, which is Medicaid planning. And quite often people call me thinking that I can actually get them what they need. And then I'm so happy to refer them to you. And everyone comes back and they have just the nicest things to say about you. So firstly, thank you so much for taking care of my clients.
Thank you for sending them to me. And I know that when they've already worked with you, all the paperwork is so good. I actually am excited when I get one of your clients.
Amazing.
That's
So
really good.
the premise of this podcast is to talk about things that, sometimes people don't really quite understand, these kind of misconceptions in our field. And there's quite a few in estate planning, just to name a few: what a will does, how to avoid probate, what is probate. Those are things that people walk around and they just don't really know how it actually works. So I found that, maybe it probably happens across other areas too. So I wanted to open it up and see, are there any common misconceptions in what you do that people sometimes get wrong?
Yeah, so many. But firstly, they ask me all those same identical questions, like what's a will, what's probate, how do I avoid probate? And I'm always like, you need to speak to Odelia because I don't really know the real nuances of all that. And then they always ask me to do all that type of work for them. And I also say, go back to Odelia, please. So what happens with my area of law is the families are in crisis. So often I'm getting a call from an adult child whose mom just happened to have she slipped, fell, ended up in the hospital, then ended up in rehab. And the rehab facility is saying, hey, if your mom's going to need to be here long term, Medicare is not going to pay. And she needs Medicaid to pay for it. And so often people say, well, my mom can't, we're not poor. We can't get Medicaid. That's only for people who don't have any money at all. And that's sort of true, but it's not true. So in Florida, we're allowed to work through a lot of those issues of too many assets or too much income. And we're able to get people Medicaid when their first response is, we can't get Medicaid. And that's a great call. That doesn't come from your clients. That comes from people who haven't spoken to somebody like you. And so that's the first one is, oh, we're not poor. We can't get Medicaid. But the system doesn't work quite right. So people need Medicaid, and regular middle class, upper middle class, wealthy people need Medicaid.
Yeah,
So,
I feel like it used to be kind of like a little bit more for everyone. And then it became very much a needs-based program that people had to qualify for. Of course, everybody gets Medicare at a certain age, but Medicaid really tightened up through the years. When I first started practicing, Medicaid planning was always a part of estate planning, right? We did estate planning and then we did the Medicaid piece of it together. And then throughout the years, it kind of evolved into its own subject matter. And I tell people all the time, the Medicaid laws are half federal and half state. So you have to be really so on top of it that it's pretty much your main thing that you do. It's very hard to be a good Medicaid attorney, plus also do probate, closings, contracts. You kind of have to focus your practice area in that because it's super nuanced. And of course, you're actually creating a project and a plan for someone as opposed to generating documents or, doing the closing and then everybody kind of just leaves. It's more involved and it is more obviously time consuming.
yeah, it's very time consuming because everyone who goes through this, it's really their first and probably only time they're ever going to go through it.
Right.
Number one. Number two, it's all I do. I don't do any estate plan. I've never been to probate court. I've never, that's just, I wouldn't do my own deeds, right? So this is all I do, and it's all about strategy, and it is nuanced, and it's a great practice area, Odelia, and you'd be quite good at it if that's what you wanted to do. But it's really like you got to be patient. I'm a patient person, except with the dogs here, it's a great practice area because you really know that you are helping people.
Absolutely.
I don't know about you. I'm sure you get a lot of hugs from your clients. I'm a lawyer. I'm always shocked when these families are hugging me, but I get a lot of hugs because it's a crisis when the people are calling me most of the time.
Yeah, you definitely saved the day. So I understand that there's several ways to get into the Medicaid system, right? Obviously, people are super familiar with the 5-year look back. And so they, sometimes talk about that you can set it up so that in 5 years you qualify. And I think that, way that you talked about is when there's already an issue and somebody is in the hospital or assisted living facility or somewhere, and then that the program kind of kicks in a little bit differently.
Right. Yeah. When somebody tells me, oh, I'm planning on needing long-term care in 6 years, I'm like, oh, do you have a crystal ball or something? Because none of my clients are planning 6 years out. Right. So I am always within the 5-year look back. And sometimes clients will tell me, well, you are considering the 5-year look back. And I'm like, I've heard of that. Yes. There's ways around it. Right. And what's so great about this area of law is you don't have to be deceptive. It's not like I'm trying to trick Medicaid. What I do, I show Medicaid everything we do to overcome that 5-year look back period. So, because look, this is South Florida. Nobody's planning generally 5 years out, at least none of my clients. And so I'm always within that time frame, and people are calling me when something's happened. Right? That's what triggers this call. Nobody wants to think about this. I don't know about in your area, right? I mean, I think it's hard to get people to think about estate planning. Think about it.
Yeah, Susie Orman is out there and she's spreading the good word, AARP. So people, they have neighbors and cousins and uncles and friends. So for me, the good word is out there. People hear stuff and they're like, oh, I heard a rumor about a trust, trust, limits my liability. And I'm like, well, you might get sued, but you're definitely going to die, So we can talk about liability protection and asset protection, but, let's talk about probate protection because that's a guaranteed. So, for me, it's not as first of all, I'm amazed that nobody knows what happens when they die. That to me is just smart people, intelligent people, unsophisticated people. It doesn't matter. People just walk around not knowing what happens when they pass away, literally and figuratively, of course. But the mechanics of, the bank locks up assets, social security numbers are distributed, from the funeral home. Those are things that, like, to me, makes sense, but also just is so not talked about out there that it's always fascinating when that happens. When I have a conversation and, you see people and they're like, oh, wow, I had no idea that was even something that takes place. And I'm like, oh yeah, for everyone.
What you do is, well, you also have a lot of nuances in your practice area and a lot of, say, like less formal information that they need to get that's so valuable. And I know you give it to them and your staff gives it to them, and it makes a huge difference in people's lives, and also in a moment of crisis, of ultimate crisis, when somebody has passed, to have your guidance get people over some of those hurdles. It's really valuable. So,
yep, definitely.
I'm glad you're there. I always feel great when I can send you some of my clients. I always know that they're going to be treated, really well by you and by your staff.
I feel the same way about you. I do have a fairly large referral network for when people have a real estate dispute or probate dispute or, quiet title action. And, not everybody clicks with everybody just because I like them or I think they're, good attorneys doesn't mean, but with you, 100% of the time, everyone has come back and just, even if sometimes it's not a good fit in terms of it's too early to do the Medicaid stuff or, they meant Medicare or, they always come back and say how helpful you've been. So that's just comforting in and of itself to know that I have a subject matter expert to kind of fill in the gaps that I don't do.
Right. Well, I am the same way about having experts surrounding me because I only know this much, right?
I feel.
But I know a lot about my area of law, but it's only this big. So I always get like the cousin who's like, well, you're an attorney, so you must know how to do, a hostile takeover of a public company. I'm like, what? I've watched TV shows.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, having somebody like you and other people, actually you've introduced me to some other people, and it just makes me feel good because I hate when I get these calls and I'm not the answer.
Yeah.
And then if I want to give them the next person to talk to, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to send them back to Google or something.
I know.
And so it really makes me feel good. I love getting referrals from you too. It really, it means a lot.
So is there any other common misconception in terms of the Medicaid? You work with veterans benefits too, right?
Yeah, I do. And the veterans benefits are interesting because in one way, they're really great. So they're really great for somebody who's at home and they want to get some nursing care. Medicaid pays for some nursing care at home or home health aides at home, but the Veterans Administration also has benefits for that. And it works really well. Meanwhile, it does not work at all or almost not at all if you're in a nursing facility. So the VA has to be done at the right time for the right situation. So it's a good benefit for any veteran who served during wartime. He didn't have to go to war. He just had to be in the military during wartime, or the widow or even spouse of a veteran. It doesn't have to be a widow. It can be a spouse of a veteran who served during that time would be, certainly should consider the benefit that's called aid in attendance. It can really be a lifesaver. Actually, my father received aid in attendance when he was going through this. Yeah.
Did they recently change the rules so that it doesn't have to be during active duty, or maybe I'm making that up?
I think you're making that up. So the rule is that you have to have served during wartime, but you didn't have to go and actually be shot at.
Gotcha.
But they did change a lot of the rules. It used to be really common for me to get people Medicaid benefits and VA benefits. I would stack them all the time. But they kind of changed some of the rules around the assets. So when I'm really protecting lots of assets, the VA doesn't fit. They have a 3-year look back instead of a 5-year, but some of the mechanisms I use in Medicaid every day, they don't like it with the VA. So we work through that. When a family comes to me and says, this is what's happening to grandma, and I do my due diligence, find out about their lives, and I sit there and I hear their story. And I say, okay, this is the program for you. This is how we get there. Here's some other options. And we try to find something that fits in a crisis. So.
Does it make sense to try to plan some of this, or this really is a crisis situation type of practice area?
Well, for me, certainly it would make sense to plan, right? So if I could talk to people who are well when they're thinking about this, like they've come to you and they've done a really nice estate plan, and they're out there really enjoying their retirement, or maybe not even retired, right? Yes, we can do certain things, but the typical one that is done in other states quite a bit is an asset protection trust. In fact, they call a Medicaid asset protection trust. And that definitely relies on the 5-year look back period. You have to do everything 5 years ago before you need the the benefit, excuse me, and then you have to have operated it correctly. And that is what I find so often is a problem is they have one of these beautifully written trusts, but they didn't operate it well. And so Medicaid would tear it apart. So I don't have a lot of people who plan that far in advance. But it's always, you know what I do have is I have people who call me and we do a couple consultations around some ideas, right? And then I probably send them to you to actually do real estate planning, but I'll give them some ideas about what they can do with certain assets.
Yeah. Do you find that, with the migration of the New Yorkers and the people from New Jersey, that it drove up the practice? Because it seems to me much more common in New York and in New Jersey to put this plan in place, kind of like a cultural thing. Certain cultural pockets kind of, feel like this is, one of the, like estate planning, Medicaid planning kind of a thing. So I saw quite a bit of an uptick in the phone calls that I received from, the people moving from the northeastern states.
You're exactly right. They're always from New York or Northeast, right? And so often, somebody will come to me. I start working on their case, and then I get a call from 212 area code, and it's their son who's a lawyer, and he works up in New York, and he's a brilliant lawyer, and on Wall Street or something, and he tells me I'm doing everything wrong, and I'm like, that's great, thank you for telling me. and then he's like, are you sure you're not committing fraud? And I'm like, I promise I'm not committing fraud, and if I am, I'm really bad at it because I'm literally going to show Medicaid every transaction we make from 2 years ago until we applied practically. So but they're always the brilliant attorneys from New York. But what's so great is after I've helped one of their families members, right? They start sending so many referrals who probably end up with you sometimes too. And they're great. I mean, I have a number of New York attorneys who really send me cases all the time because all of their bubbies are down in, in Broward County.
That's it. That's so funny.
But you're so right about the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is something that's used up in New York all the time. And I'm sure it works really well for somebody who's applying up there.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Well, I guess, is there anything else that you think that you'd like to kind of spread the good word about elder law in general? I know really what we're talking about is the difference between estate planning and elder law, which is kind of, we're asking a lot from people to know the difference because most people think lawyers are lawyers. Like you're a mechanic, you're a mechanic, you're a dentist, you're a dentist, lawyer's a lawyer. They don't recognize that we're so nuanced these days. It's really hard to be good at everything. But even within our own kind of elder law genre of helping people, kind of with the aging process and the transactional part of things, we kind of separate out into the different areas. So, whereas I do the general estate planning and you do the Medicaid, Medicare, veterans portion of it, I guess that's the biggest takeaway of this conversation is knowing what area, we need, and the fact that we have a good symbiotic relationship where I'm able to refer clients and vice versa so that we fill in the gaps for people. But beyond that, knowing the difference, is there anything else you'd like to share with the humans in terms of what you do?
Well, really, the first thing is it's okay if you call me and you don't need exactly what I do because I'm going to try to put you with the right person who does, right? So that's always okay. Number one. Number two, like those first calls, because it's such a weird area of law, I don't charge for consultations, right? Because I got to figure out if I can help them. I mean, it's likely they're calling me about something that's not even close to what I do, right? Like Medicare. Oh, I'm trying to get my Medicare and I'm only 50 years old and I'm working. I'm like, you don't need me for any of that, right? So that's one of the things. Call, if you have a question, it's much better to probably talk to a subject matter expert than your cousin in Boca.
Yeah.
Right. So much better to do that. And the one thing that I think is a misconception about what I do is what the benefit can bring, right? So it can bring some home health aides, it can bring some discounts, big discounts at assisted living and nursing homes. And I don't do wills and estates. But it's really, I think if we're talking to humans and not to lawyers necessarily right now, it's make the call, ask the questions before you do that. Hey, I just gave my house away, right? Kind of activity. Make the call right before you give it away.
Yes. Don't give your house away. It's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, please call me while you're thinking about it. That's the funniest thing. I had a client who's like, I didn't know if I should buy that car or not. And they called me from the car dealership after they bought the car. I'm like, really? You couldn't call me 5 minutes ago?
So close.
That's right. They had the right idea. And they clearly had my number.
Almost.
So often. And then it's like, it's 10 steps to fix. I've got 2 cases right now where I'm doing all these little steps and they're painful steps. They're things I can't control. So my client actually has to do it.
Well, my biggest I take personally is when I probate an estate and a property, and then a couple of years later I reprobate that property again. I take that personally because it's so easily avoidable. I tell people exactly what to do if we're going to sell it, if we're going to keep it, if we're going to, so I take that personally. It's like a hit to my ego. I'm like, oh man, it's that is probably the only thing that really gets me upset in everything I do. Whatever happens. I'm like, whatever. But when I have to reprobate a property, I'm like, darn, that makes me feel like I'm not doing my job,
Well, they probably had your card in their wallet all that time and they kept looking, I should call her. Oh, I don't want to bother her. You can buy, to the humans out there, and I guess to the other attorneys too, you can bother us.
Yeah.
Call us. Ask the question. Right?
I'm used to being bothered. Yeah, that's what.
But yeah, like that's what
bother me.
It's that for me, it's not a bother because I drive around a lot, right? Because I go to my clients because a lot of times my clients aren't mobile. So I'm driving. Those long phone calls I have with people who are asking what they think are not good questions are what keep me sane while I'm stuck on 95 or the turnpike. Because I'm having like a half-hour call and they're like, are you sure you're an attorney? You talked to me for a half hour and didn't bill me. And I'll say to them, look, you just kept me in traffic and happy. That's amazing.
That is amazing.
That's a plus, right? That's a good area of law.
Yeah. So your area is all the way Miami to Boca. How far do you go?
So yeah, sometimes I'll go to Boca. I've been to Boca plenty of times. So what I try to do is when I'm not going to drive to Boca to have somebody ask me those questions, right? Like, oh, should we do elder law? Right. I'm not going to do that, right? But I'm open for lots of long phone calls, Zoom calls, whatever, to determine that they need me. And then when I want to meet my clients, and a lot of times my clients are not ambulatory, right? Yeah. So it's just part of the way the practice works for me.
Yeah.
I don't have 100 clients every month.
Yeah.
But I get to spend time with them and figure out their issues and finally dig up their paperwork I need because they can't find it.
That's where they keep their papers, in their house. That's exactly right.
Yeah, they probably bring their whole file cabinet to your office sometimes. I could imagine. So I'll go up to my clients routinely are up in Boca. And down to, I've been to, I've had cases in the Keys, not too many. But we do all of the work before we get there, right? And then that last one is all about making sure we have everything right, making sure we have the right people, me kind of feeling out the family members a little bit by being with them everybody's in the same room. We're really talking. A lot of times people will fly in from out of town so they can be a part of that meeting. Yeah. And then I make it really clear, I'm grandma's attorney, not you, big attorney in New York. You're not my client. Your grandma's my client.
Right.
Right.
But we got to know who our clients are. Rule number 1, who's your client?
You got to make sure all the other brilliant attorneys who are trying to help me know that, right?
No,
the family members. But it's good. It's such a nice area of law.
I love that. Good. Well, I'm happy you love it, because for me, it makes my job so much easier to have you, Andrew. I really appreciate you taking the time today. Where can people find you if they want more information?
So you call Odelia and they know my phone number. No, so definitely online. Bellinson Law Firm. No, the Bellinson Law Firm, because there's another Bellinson. One of my cousins
Oh,
beat me
really?
to. Yeah, he beat me to. He's up in New York. He's one of those brilliant attorneys up in New York.
He's the one
So,
who's asking about your estate.
all the time. So it's yeah, actually his dad's in Boca. That's so funny. Yeah, so it's thebellinsonlawfirm.com. My name's Andrew Bellinson, easily found, right?
Amazing.
And even though my primary office is in North Miami, I meet with people all over the place. I have conference rooms in a lot of different areas if we need to meet in a conference room, but also, I'll meet with people in nursing facilities. I don't go to hospitals, but nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, in grandma's apartment, whatever makes it work for the family. That last meeting has to be like that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know for me, you're, virtual hug, you're a huge help. And, I know I can speak for the hundreds of clients that I know that you've helped. You're a great asset. So I appreciate you.
Thanks, Odelia. And I feel the same way about you. And I'm so happy that I brag about you guys all the time. Not only how good you are, but how nice your people are. Your staff is they're really outstanding.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
You've been tuning in to the Adulting Demystified podcast with your host, Odelia Goldberg. You should never get legal advice from a podcast. Please don't do anything stupid and ruin it for the rest of us. You deserve to have your own legal advice from a legal professional. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, ogoldberglaw.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.